Welcome to Are You Fucking Kidding Me? A thoughtful parenting podcast. The show that takes you from diaper disasters to the legendary teenage eye roll. I'm your host, Clementine Lord, here to guide you through every stage of parenting, from toddlers testing your patience to adult children testing your Wi-Fi limits. Parenting is a wild ride, and no matter your child's age, you'll always find a moment where you think, are you fucking kidding me? Hi, I'm Clementine Lord, the host of Are You Fucking Kidding Me? A thoughtful parenting podcast. And with me today, we have Kitty, who you guys will see on the podcast more than once because she's amazing and she and I got to be friends over COVID. We've actually never met in person. We've only seen each other on video. We talk a lot. And so today's podcast is going to be more about traditions, right? Like how do you keep life going when we have loss? And so Kitty this past year lost her mother and has 3 kiddos who she still had to parent, one who is now an adult. And she's out in the real world now, right?
She leaves tomorrow for a whole new world.
Oh my gosh, I love it. And so I think that's kind of the deal, right? Is how do we parent through all of this while also honoring ourselves, like by also trusting that we can say to our kids during Christmas or Thanksgiving, like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I don't have time for this right now. This is absolute bullshit. Like, go sit in your room and watch My Little Pony. I don't care.
Do something.
Right? So tell me a little bit about your story about how this works in your life.
Yeah. So it was hard this year. There are a couple factors at play though, I think, and it took talking to a lot of people, or a few very close people, I should say, trusted advisors, if you will, to really kind of sort out those emotions. And one thing that when you say about the kids and, trying to parent during it, the one thing that it keeps popping into the forefront of my mind is that we have to remember that they're mourning too. And I think such a great loss tends to be so personal, and you tend to do the adult things and have the adult conversations. And we tend to, it's like, keep the kids their normal routine, keep the kids doing the same things. It's like, we want that consistency for them, but also that's kind of just sweeping it under the rug for them and not allowing those emotions and feelings to happen. And I think that we underestimate how many emotions and feelings kids actually have. So I had to really take a step back and realize, like, yes, I'm allowed to have this grief, but I need to make space for them also to have this. And I can't just sort of cuddle it away. And that probably for me stems from, we lost my grandfather very early on in my life. So I was only 2 years old, but it was on Christmas Eve. It happened during the height of the holiday. Very unexpected. So that's me not understanding, like, my mom just lost her father. She would have been very young, right? Less than 30 at that point. And, my grandmother lost her husband. Like, all of those are such big things. And what they did was continue marching on because it was Christmas and the kids, and we have to make this thing. And so every year just always became about Christmas with the kids. And so when I look at that and I see that determination for them to keep things normal, I can also see where we sort of stuffed a lot of emotions in the closet because we very rarely talked about his death in that way growing up. Mm-hmm. And so it was always about the tradition of Christmas. And so when my grandmother passed in 2022, it was, how do we hold on to this tradition of Christmas? It was like we were doing all of Christmas for her. She was like Mrs. Claus, right? And then we had to kind of unravel that. And I had to say to myself, like, I'm not sure that we kept these, like, she was so good at this Christmas stuff, but then it's like, was it just a mask to cover up all of that pain and all of the heartache? So when we lost my mom this year, certainly my whole goal was to jump in, and she was an excellent baker. She was the person who made the pies for everyone in our family, whether we ate with them or not. She was the one who made the Christmas cookies with her best friend who we lost in 2020. And, there was just like days and hours and things around baking where conversations were happening and whole days were spent doing it. And I'm not that person. I'm the complete opposite of that person. I'm so bad at baking. It's just not part of who I am. And I thought, who is going to carry on this tradition for her? And so that became my mission, was like, I'm going to do this. But I couldn't do that because, like you said, at some point we have to just stop and say what's worth doing and what's not. And so it was costing me, that sanity and that peace of mind, and that, like, I wanted so badly for this to happen, but every single thing that could have stood in my way from making that happen actually took place. Like, as I tried to do it, the more I tried, the worse it became. And so we kind of just scrapped it, and came Thanksgiving, no pies. But then we had been invited to a dessert that evening, and we went, and there were a plethora of pies. Like, it will happen. Other people will fill in those gaps for you. And like, I think I took that on so personally, like, how do I take this thing that was hers and still offer it out to everybody around me? But what I was doing was I was undermining the grief of my kids. I was not giving myself enough space to just be, and I wasn't accepting the help of everyone else who honestly wanted to step in and fill that. Like, everybody showed up with a pie thinking, this is it. I'm going to take on this. Like, I can now make the pies, or I can. And it was so nice and so relieving to see that I could just sit and have dessert, and I could be part of the other side of that conversation.
The village, right? Like, letting
Right.
that happen. Like, that's the one thing I talk about a lot. Like, so when my father-in-law passed away, this is part of where this came from for me, was that my father-in-law passed away. Well, May, it'll be 2 years. And my kids were in summer camp. They were in an art summer camp. That's our favorite camp of the year. And I remember that, well, actually, one of my kids was at a music camp in a different town, and the other one was at an art camp. And I remember being like, oh no. The night he passed, we had a little bit of warrant. Like, he passed within 24 hours. He had a stroke and then passed within 24 hours of it. So we kind of were like, this might be it. So, but then it was like calling and making the arrangements, being like, can my daughter spend the night at your house since our kids are going to the camp together? Calling the camp out of town, the music camp, and being like, my kid's at this camp, and I think his grandfather's going to die tonight. Is there any way you can have him call me? Because they weren't allowed to have their cell phones, and all these little things, right? And I think what I learned in that space was how the village helped my kids mourn. So, like, my son, when he found out that his papa had passed, it was like 7, almost 8 o'clock at night, and all the kids in his bunk were like, let's go swimming.
Oh.
Right? Like, he was sad. They let him cry. They let him mourn. He was with 2 of his good friends. And then they're like, let's just go swimming. And I was like, oh, I bet you that felt really good. And he goes, yeah, actually. Just not having to sit and be like, oh, my grandpa died. Now I'm going to sit here and just think about all the good memories with my grandpa.
Yeah.
But I can just do something that brings me joy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I totally get that, right? Yeah. And then as adults, we don't do that well at all. I mean, at least I don't.
We don't.
I mean, I think I need somebody to say to me the same phrase. Are you fucking kidding me, Clementine? Like, let them help.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you're the doer too, like, I'm so used to just being the person who just does it. And I've had something that I'll give you as an aside. I've had to take a lot of time to understand that I don't have to be independent. And I think, like, you've seen probably the conversation passed around online, but like, independence can often be a trauma response. And I just think sometimes that, like, I've been let down before. So it's like, I'm just going to be the person in charge of it. But then when you come up against grief and mourning and trying to be independent, you let yourself down so much in that you're right. Like, we just need to take a moment to go swimming or just go enjoy something where it's like, there is joy in the paradox, right? Like, we have to remember that we're still living, even though right now for a moment in time. Like it feels like the world has stopped.
Well, yeah, and I think that's
Yeah.
exactly it. And so it's like, but then it's also that space of like, how do we parent? How do we keep on these
Yeah.
traditions, but also not put that pressure on our kids that like
Yeah.
when we leave, that they have to continue on the tradition. Like
Yeah.
my kids, their grandfather used to make these candy cane cookies. You know, these
Yeah. Oh
sugar
my gosh,
cookies.
that is my mom's.
Yeah.
I'll let
Right,
you tell your
okay.
story.
Yeah, right. Like candy cane cookies are a thing, and they're a labor of love, and they're like the most coveted thing that Papa made. And he would make, I mean, he was a baker as well. And so he would do these care packages, and we'd have like, I live in Montana, which I say at almost every episode. So he would usually during hunting season kill a deer, and then we'd all get deer jerky that he made himself and marinated and did all the way. I mean, I don't even know all the pieces that go to processing your own meat and
Right.
soaking your own meat and drying your own, like I think about that and go, oh, that sounds hard. Right? But he made caramel corn and fudge
Oh
and
my gosh.
bonbons and yeah, these candy cane cookies, all these things. And so this year my daughter was like, I want to learn how to make candy cane cookies. And we didn't do it. We got the recipe and we just got busy. But she's like, that is what I want, how I want to honor my papa come Christmas next year, is I want to make candy cane cookies. And she goes, and if I can make enough, I'd like to send them to all my cousins. And I was like, oh, but that didn't come from me.
Right.
That wasn't my way of like, I mean, it was just kind of like, Papa's gone now. Oh, you missed this part? Well, maybe, and she's an amazing baker. I was like, well, maybe that's something you could do.
Yeah.
I don't have time to bake 100 candy cane cookies.
Right.
But she's 12. Right. She has time.
Right.
So it is, I think that's exactly it. It's like, oh, right. Like, again, I'm like you, I'm a doer. I do the things. And one of the things that my husband and I have talked about is the mental load. Like, how do we continue that mental load to relieve it and alleviate it? Because I don't need to be the carrier of said mental load in the backpack.
Yeah.
Of all the things like, oh, today's your dad's birthday. Oh, today's the day your dad died. Oh, today's the day that we found out your dad was being put on hospice. Oh, like, be aware of those days, but it's not my dad. And it doesn't mean that I'm not sad that he's gone, because he was very important in my life. But I don't have to carry those burdens of my child and my kids.
Yeah.
But I can stop and be like, you know what? Today's your dad's birthday. How do you feel about that? Do you want to have friends over and have dinner? Or, hey, our first Thanksgiving, I remember my best friend in another town asked if we could come to her house. She's like, I think it might be easier than you hosting at your house, since he used to come on Thanksgiving. And I was like, that sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it was just this like very sweet and beautiful gestures that I could have been like, no, we're fine. We'll just stay here. It's okay. But I made the unilateral decision. I didn't even ask my husband. I was like, that sounds great. And I was like, oh, by the way, we're driving 5 hours for Thanksgiving.
But it'll be fine. It'll be a wonderful drive.
It was, and it was beautiful and lovely. Right. I mean, we live in Montana. Driving 5 hours is something we do. I mean,
fairly often.
Yeah, like we drive 3 hours one way just to go skiing at some ski hills. So whatever.
Right.
I joke and I'm like, if you live in Montana and have a kid who can't handle being in a car, then you are in the wrong. Move to the East Coast.
It's very true. It's very true.
So, I mean, that said, we also don't have commutes. Like,
yeah,
you know, I mean, I live 15 minutes away from the yoga studio I own. So it's like, and that's literally the drive time, not 2 miles away, and it's 15-minute drive. Right. So, whereas, you know, you living in a city, and I've lived in cities where it's like some drives end up being 3 hours for 2 miles.
3 miles for us could be an easy 25 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, I think that's, so what other things in your experience, holidays excluded, have been things that have come up, like when it comes to parenting your kids in this year of being aware of how much your mother did or didn't do for you,
Yeah.
of how does that transpose into your own, because you have an adult child and you have two
Mhm.
young kids. So how does that translate to you of like what that looks like?
Yeah.
Because I have an adult kiddo, and I have two school age kiddos. And so it's very similar for us too. Like you parent differently, right?
Yes. And the experience is different because when Maddie, who is the oldest, when Maddie was little, she spent every weekend with my parents. I had gone through separation, then
Yeah.
divorce. And so that's where she went on weekends, and we both worked weekends. And um, so she was literally for 2 or 3 years raised by my parents on weekends and most of the time, right? If we needed help. So there's a, there was a different level of connection there. And then my middle, Maisie, was born in 2014 and Nora came in 2015. But my mom's original cancer diagnosis came in 2018. So the little children were not very old to go through that process, and to really understand it. And so a lot of that was never really discussed with them. Life just sort of happened around them, um, because it would have just taken on. I have one that has a very empathetic heart that all she would have done was worry. And I have one that, processes emotions far different than the rest of us. Um, but it was understanding, number one, how each one of them connects and how each one of them processes just the world around them, knowing when to talk and what to talk about. But so for my mom, even though cancer was diagnosed in 2018, her cancer story is extremely rare and crazy and confusing. And it just seemed to happen like we would have a good outcome and then there would be a surgery and then it was like cancer is gone. And then she had a recurring cancer. And the difference with hers is that she wasn't getting, it was the same type of cancer, but it was attacking different organs in her body. The problem with that was they didn't know how to treat that.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom was I won't say she didn't do well with communicating it. She chose not to communicate with us, whether it was just hard for her to do so or whether she didn't know how. But she kept a lot of it private. And so moving forward, we always thought, oh, great result, great outcome. We're moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. So it wasn't until earlier this year, well, I should say earlier 2024. Now
Right.
we're in a new year, but it wasn't until the earlier part of 2024 that we started to realize, like, I think we're inching toward an end that we're not looking forward to. Um, Maddie graduated high school in June, and you could just tell when you talked to my mom that she was like holding her breath, waiting just to get to graduation. And so that was a big change because no one had really understood that we were that close to the finish line.
Right.
Like it was like, no, you've got another 20 years, like you've got doctors and people. Um, and I just remember saying to her, what stage are we in? Because my mom's cancer was colon cancer, but her colon cancer was now throughout her body. And she said, stage 5, which for colon cancer is the highest. And I said, it's always been stage 5. And that's how she communicated it to me in a very frustrated tone. And I realized, like, oh, she's always known that the end result would be this. Like, there wasn't really much hope or option, which is sad and hard to hear. But at the same time, I think caused us to miss a lot of opportunity to get maybe differing opinions or things like that. Like she just decided a while ago, like, this is it, this is my fate. So that being said, I started realizing like I need to talk about this more with my kids. Maddie had always known and had been through the process, but the younger two, it was like, okay, we've got to start saying a little bit more. And it wasn't until like May or June that I started saying, like, grandma's pretty sick. We need to visit. We need to do these things. And like, she was very irritable. So to be around her was hard, um, for good reason. So like her personality diminished over the last year. Like, so we went from having someone who wanted so badly to be a grandparent who was involved in doing and traveling with us to someone who could barely walk, and a lot of other issues coming along. And so she was just kind of fading, and we were seeing that light just exit. Um, but when the graduation party came around, granted it was 105 degrees here in Pittsburgh, it was ridiculously hot, an outdoor party celebration, the whole thing. And she showed up, but couldn't wear a wig, had to kind of just be herself because it was just so hot. And that's when, the introduction becomes like, this is my mom, a person you've never met before, but she has terminal cancer. And it went from being, oh, we're working on it, we're going to get through it, to this, we're meeting an end. And so that conversation got heavier and heavier. And we started doing the bucket list items. We started fulfilling those things. But then came August, and she was supposed to go on this once in a lifetime opportunity for us to travel, and all of Maddie's life, it was, we were going to London when she graduated high school, and my mom was going to come, and we were doing the thing. And so we planned the trip, and she was like, I can't go. I just don't think I'm going to be able to go. So that was really hard because we had done all of this talk for 14, 15 years. And then it just came to the moment where she was like, I can't be there. I can't do that. And that starts to, you look at your kids a little different, thinking, wow, the things we've been promising, we just never know. But yeah, so we went on that trip, and she just, right before we left, she basically was like, I'm just hanging on until you get back from that. And exactly what she did. But in terms of how we handled it with the kids, and I think that was your original question, I went down
this is perfect, because I was actually going to ask you to tell me more about your European vacation. So this is
yes. So but looking at how they each processed that, how they would process not only the grief, but just like the emotion of all of it, really helped in terms of, Maisie has such an empathetic heart that I had to be very gentle with how we talked and how we dealt. Nora is like an avoider until the situation just erupts in your face. But because it was so unexpected at the end, I mean, we should have known, but it was so unexpected the way that it happened. It took me until about a week ago for my reality to catch up with what was going on. So the one thing I wanted to say was, when we are trying to parent, we have to understand too that we're not always going to understand what happened. And so for me, the holidays were like, push through. And we did. And we just decided this year would be different traditions altogether, keeping some of the things the same. My mom also was, the candy cane cookies were like the big thing. I have the dough in my refrigerator, and that's as far as we got. And it never got made. But you know what? You scrap it at some point and you move on. And we didn't really do pies. I eventually got a pie made, but we scrapped a lot of that. But we came up with things that me and my children can deem as traditions, and we can move forward and do little things. So I realized it wasn't about the big gathering of people, and it wasn't about the same rituals happening. It's about more that sanctity of just keeping some piece of that person alive, like the candy cane cookies, or cardinals were a very big gift this year. Everyone got me those, which I appreciate, but it's like putting little pieces of them into the Christmas experience that gets to be opened every year when the box comes out. And it gets to be, something that they can look and say, oh gosh, this reminds me of this person. And I had to take a step back because I had such a huge family growing up that, we had big giant parties, and Christmas was a massive celebration for us. But over the years, those things have been, getting smaller and smaller. And so I sat in my house this Christmas with my family, just the five of us. And it was one of those things where it was like, you just have to learn at some point that it's not about the celebration. It's about the way that you honor the things that came before. And so it was New Year's Eve when the reality of the fact that she was no longer here really caught up. So I think I pushed through, and then I broke, right? Yeah. Because that eventually we just shattered. And that's
that's
right.
kind of, and that's kind of what I watched my husband do as well. I would say very similar, like the day after his dad died, my husband is a runner. And so he ran, and then he did this big, huge mountain race, and he finished it, but it wasn't the actual route that he wanted to do. And so then he goes and does this race again this fall and finishes it. And I was like, we're not doing that ever again. Like, I love the crowd, but like his, what it does to his psyche is a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
And like for him, it was like not finishing wasn't an option because it's all in his dad's honor, right? And so like if he didn't finish, he was letting his dad down. I'm like, your dad's not even here, dude.
Right.
Like, you're not letting anyone down but yourself. But I can understand, like, I have a huge empathic heart. And so for me, I could totally understand that desire, that feeling, that need, connecting with whether it be another realm or whatever you want to call it, angels, like knowing that he was watching, all the things, right? And so, it is really interesting. Probably if you were to ask your husband the same thing, like to stand on the other side and be like, okay, how are we going to do this? Like, this is a new stuff, new traditions. And it's interesting because early on, my mom comes from a huge family. My mom's one of 9.
Oh, wow.
And right. Like huge. And same thing. Like I have like 30 cousins. So, and we get together all the time. I love them. I know all of my cousins. And then Andy comes from a huge extended family, my husband. He's one of 10, and including siblings and step siblings. And so there was lots of traditions. And it was like, as we started doing things, I was like, I can't do these traditions. They overwhelm me. What happens when the older people leave and are no longer with us? Like, what do we then have to pass on to our kids? I don't even know what to do. Like, can we create our own? And so about a decade ago, we started doing this Christmas Eve party for any of our friends who were still in town on Christmas Eve. It was something that a family did when my childhood in my hometown. And it always stuck with me because it was one way as a kid to like have something other than Christmas to look forward to.
Right.
And so I had the excitement of this like Christmas Eve party, like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for that. And then by the time we got home, I'd just been around hundreds of people and I just wanted to go to sleep. So I was like, oh, this is what I want. I don't want my kids to be like, can I open a present? Can I open a present? Can I open a present? And we do all of our gifts on Christmas Day, as our family tradition. And and I know some families do Christmas Eve. I know it's actually really interesting being so close to the Midwest, because I think in the Midwest, it's a very common thing to do Christmas Eve, Christmas opening. And then Santa comes, and then you do Santa gifts Christmas Day.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting, but my mom was raised by a Midwest family, but for whatever reason, they always did, I think because they had so many kids and probably couldn't even afford their Christmas presents until Christmas Eve. So we got presents on Christmas Day. My dad would tell me stories about how he grew up in New Jersey, and he would tell me stories about how Santa delivered their Christmas tree and decorated it.
Yeah. So that was, my mom growing up too.
Oh, interesting.
It showed up the night before. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
What? Yeah. And so, my dad totally, I was like, really? And so that must be an East Coast thing. That was not a tradition that was passed down to us.
Interesting.
And now I'm the obsessive Christmas human who has, I think, 4 full-size Christmas trees in my house. And it's like the North Pole vomited in my house. And
I love it.
In a tasteful, nice way. Like, it doesn't look like your grandmother's tchotchkes that got lined up everywhere. But I think those traditions, right, of like realizing that like, oh, I have permission from myself to start new things. Yeah. And I think so often, again, our parents are our parents. So we don't want to let our parents down, and we don't want to upset them. But I think the other piece, kind of where this podcast came from, is like setting those expectations for our kids early on, right? Yeah. Like that, like, I hope my kids don't feel like they have to worry about letting me down with traditions. because I hope that I'm teaching them that they get to do whatever traditions they want when they leave.
Yeah.
If they decide that they're going to marry a Jewish person and not celebrate Christmas ever again, all right.
We just
Tell me,
adapt, right?
yeah, like tell me how do we celebrate what you do?
Exactly.
And I think we're lucky, oddly enough, here in Montana, our very close family friends are Baha'i. And so we've had this really beautiful exchange, my children's whole life, where we celebrate their New Year celebration, which is called Ayamiha. And then they come and celebrate Christmas with us through our party. And so it's this beautiful exchange of celebrations, understanding that not everyone celebrates the same things, and we can have different traditions and beliefs and thought processes, and it might seem weird, but how lovely that we can share, and it doesn't have to be like, oh, we don't do that, right? Like it's not this space of that's not my family's tradition, so it must be bad.
Sure.
So yeah, I think that kind of in my mind kind of wraps up kind of what we were talking about. Like, how do we do this? How do we do this crazy, messy thing in a healthy way without it doing right? Like, how easy would it have been since June to like start drinking your way through the summer and fall, right? Being like, oh my gosh, it was a tough day. I just need a drink. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but your career has also changed in that time.
Yeah. I mean, yes.
I mean, within reason, like you are actually, like you were working from home and now you actually go to a place to work. And
I do.
And so I think that that's also a whole nother thing too, of like how we fit. And honestly, I would say it's traumatic. Losing a parent, whether someone wants to say it can be beautiful. Like losing my father-in-law was the most beautiful thing I've ever observed. And it was interesting because we all get to be in the house with him as he passed. But it was like, but I can also say, like, watching my son, my oldest son who was there, like him watching his grandpa pass was super traumatic.
Well, yeah.
And right.
Yeah.
And so it's this like whole space of like, how do I hold space for him? How do we honor him in his experience? Because at that point he was 26. So yeah, like your daughter, right, had a much different version of who his grandfather was versus his siblings.
Right.
And then making sure that we honor those positive times that we remember, as opposed to then reflecting like it would be really easy for you to reflect on your London trip and be like, gosh, we should have done it sooner. And I know you had those feelings.
Yeah, in a way. I don't know that we thought we should have done it sooner. I wish that it would have been different timing. Yeah. I just, the whole thing is regrettable in some aspect, like, how you make the plans and how you do it. I'm not sure that really was the thought. But it would have been nice to have been able to take her and do that exploration and that exploring. My mom actually landed herself in the hospital before we left. So one of the things that I guess in a way was good was that we did have the opportunity for the kids to sit with her. And even though we were begging for that to not be the end, they had a really good last moment with her. When we came back from London, we were off the plane in no more than an hour. And, I had to have the conversation. Then my husband was like, you need to see your mother tomorrow. And I'm thinking, like I've been gone for a week or 10 days. And so much had changed. And so, that was that. But everyone was begging, and to your point, to be there. Everyone was begging me to take the kids. And I said, I was like, yeah, I'm sending them to school. Like, I need to go see her by myself. Do this, have this conversation with her. on my own, and they're like, she's waiting for you. She's waiting for you. That's all we've freaking heard. So I got to her house, had coffee with my brother, and then went to her house, and the pastor was there, which, it's like, where are we? Because I'm just stepping off a plane. I'm completely jet lagged. Like,
Yep.
where are we in terms of like, what are we doing? And my grandmother's house was, maybe 30 yards from my parents' house. So it's like,
Oh, wow.
growing up, we were that close together. But my grandmother's house, vacant, is, she easily accessible. My mom's house is an old farmhouse, and so she would have to walk steps or whatever to get anything done. So they had her at my grandmother's house in a hospital bed in this living room of the house that she literally grew up in. And so walking in is this whole experience to begin with. And then, the pastor is sitting there and they're praying and there's a whole thing. But she looked fine and she was having this completely normal conversation with me. And, my mother, not only was she an awesome baker, she happened to be a master gardener, like a certified degreed master gardener. So she's like, this perfect person that is like got this perfection of, being able to bring things to life and like make it out of nothing. And she's, she could sew, she could all the things. And as I'm sitting there talking to her, we're just having these conversations about like what to do with this and what to do with that, and just very much like, next week I plan to, and then she would carry on the conversation, and then she just asked to go to the bathroom, and then that was, like the fade to black. That was the end of it. But like, so never in my wildest dreams did I expect that to be part of my last conversation with her. Never. And, like it just we never finished the conversation we were in the middle of. And so what is so weird is I think when you were able to say like, I was just saying to her, like I was just telling her literally an hour ago, we were just talking about. So it went from being very, let's make this, let's embrace this, let's make it spiritual, let's, let's have this moment together. It was very not the hand holding, watching her by the bedside. Like that was my grandmother's passing. That was not my mother's. And so it became tragic. Like the next 20, 30 minutes is not a peaceful, she went in her sleep. It's a very traumatic experience. And so that was hard enough. And then it was, the everything to follow. Now, what do we do and how do we throw all these plans into place that she was literally in the process of making? And so we don't have the full plan. We don't know what to do. We have to go through that whole process. But I think just in kind of what you were saying about things being traumatic and how you see them, the trauma for me overshadowed all of the other stuff. And I went into the independent response, which was, I'm going to show up and go to work. I'm going to do all these things. And so, as you said, my career changed. So instead of working from home and doing the life coaching, I went back to be a supply teacher, a substitute teacher. And so the person that I was filling in for when I came back from London was expected to have a baby, and she did. Like the same day or the day after, my mom died early. So now we're in that like kind of like a crunch, like she left early. I don't have anybody to kind of like shadow for a while. And so my brain is going at 1,000 different ways. It's like, how do I put this all together and make this work? And who am I going to let down if I don't do it? And so I was getting phone calls 2 weeks after I had already gone back to work, and people were saying, so are you ready to go back to work yet? And I was like, I'm already there. But to your point, when you said like, we do the things and then so I go back to work and I'm in this situation where it's just children and overwhelming stimulation. And I never did the work I needed to do to get back there. And so everything overwhelmed me. And I was like, there was a day where I just was like, I did not take enough time. And I had a mental breakdown, in the middle of like just clocking out and being like, I can't do this. And talking to the school counselor and just like, going through this whole process where I was like, I am a complete and utter mess. And it was just because my mom would have pushed through and because my response was to push through. That's what I did, but that's what I made my kids do. And that's what I pushed everybody back out the door and thought, well, we're just going to keep on getting on with life. We're going to do the thing. And then I realized that that just isn't sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay if just some days we break, right? And it's okay if some days it's just not perfect. And so one of the things that kept me going, rather than just take 3 weeks off and be like, I need a minute, was that I work, it's an inner city school. We're dealing with kids who have been through some really hard times. A lot of our kids have experienced pain and loss greater than I will ever know. And they didn't have the back support to that, like my mom's story is such a beautiful story in my life. They didn't have that amazing story, but I had somebody come up to me, a sobbing, crying mess. And I'm like, what is happening today? And she just said, I miss my dad. And I thought, man, like, I get that. So then we had that heart to heart where it was like, I know exactly how you feel. Like, I know that pain, that deep, incredible loss. And so it like brings you back to like, we are putting so much pressure on kids to just show up in a world that makes zero sense to adults. And now we're just like, do this. So it allowed me to really step back. It allowed me to take more time at the holidays and really recognize like they have no idea, but more than them having no idea, they're looking to the people who are supposed to know all the answers, us as the parents, and look at us running in 30 different directions. Like you said, going out and running a race and thinking like that's the thing that's going to make our parents most proud, or that's the thing. And it took me sitting a lot of conversations in a car with my friend Erin, who is in New Zealand, again, never met in person, but has been my person since like 2017. And having these conversations via Facebook Messenger and just saying like, oh, I really need to take a step back today. But in that process, realizing that it's okay because my mom and I didn't always see eye to eye, which is a whole different level of guilt when it comes into it. But what I realized during the holidays was I love to celebrate all things really big. I love big parties, big celebrations. My mom was just very modest, right? And so I thought, now we no longer have that struggle of how it's going to be. Like it gets to just be like a whole different era, right? It gets to just, and so you have to overcome that guilt of saying like, well, I'm going to scrap her plans. But it just gets to be bigger, or it gets to be a different level of excitement. And it gets to be my life now, which is hard. But sure, I would love to have had her for the next 30 years to do all the things with us. But now I get to just carry her and just be like, look, this is the stuff I was trying to help you do when you were here. And this is the stuff that that we want to share with you. And she shows up in weird, crazy ways. Let me ask you this. Have you guys had the mysterious things enter your house?
So we don't have that, but ours is butterflies.
Oh.
So butterflies and the other one, so our other weird one is twos. So when my husband ran his first race after his dad died, it was a half marathon, and he literally finished the race in 2 hours, 2 minutes, 22 seconds, 0.2 seconds.
Yeah.
The entire thing was twos. His dad's basketball number, which he always still in welcome to Montana, where we hold on to our sport. It's like Friday Night Lights here. He's like, I'm 22. 22 is my number. And so like my husband will wake up in the morning at 2:22 and be like, oh, hi, Dad.
Right.
So there are things that like in that capacity. So twos are a big deal in our family, and then butterflies. So like I went with my husband's stepmom to Ireland this year because she'd always wanted to go to Ireland, and I used to live there, and so I was like, oh, let's go. And so we went for 5 days, and I then spent 5 days alone for my 45th birthday, which might have been the best birthday present in the world. Also strange, but the best birthday present.
I love that.
And right, I was like, oh, this is weird. I don't have anyone asking me to what's for dinner.
Right. Right.
And so, but same thing with her. We ended up having butterflies show up on our trip.
Oh.
And it was really sweet to listen to her because she feels the same. So she just stopped and goes, "Oh, hi, Paul."
Oh, that is so nice.
Everything in me was like, "Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry." But I think, so to wrap this up and kind of put a bow on it, I guess, how do you parent differently now? I mean, you kind of mentioned it, like do things bigger, but now, like, so we're 6 days past you, like having the like aha moment where you were like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Like, how do you think, like, as you look towards 2025, how do you see, or what goals have you set when it comes to your parenting journey and showing up for your kids? What's up? Or have you even gotten that far?
I don't know that I've gotten that far in terms of how I would show up for them. I think what we have been doing, though, is just taking a step back.
Yeah.
Like normally I would just want to be out there doing. But honestly, since all of that, well, one part about it is we go with friends and family every New Year's Eve. And so this New Year's Eve, I was a sobbing mess from the start to the finish. And, when people said, "Are you okay?" With the normal response, "Oh, I'm good."
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
good,
fine.
right? Except this time I was like, "I'm not." But what are we going to do? Like, there's nothing I can do. I'm not okay right now. But at the same time, I'm not going to bring down the whole party. Let's go. But yet understand if I start crying, we're cool. But then ever since, I just thought there's a whole world that we were trying to be part of instead of going backwards a bit and just bringing up that, like, the old culture, the old way, the old things. And I kind of feel like for my kids, what I want them to know is I want them to have the understanding and the stories. So one thing that we missed out on my mom was getting her to tell stories. She wasn't a storyteller. Her brothers are, but she was not. She didn't write anything down for us to really have that documented. And she never really wanted to talk about, like, the things in her life. I don't think she ever thought they were big enough to really be a story. But so we started, like, with the classics, like watching the old movies and reading, or trying to anyway, introduce the old books, the things that would have been part of her era.
Yeah.
And having them understand how that ties in to everyday life now, and then just moving forward. So really, we're actually going to, in 2025, take that step back to a time that they don't know and never got to experience, and then bring it forward. Now they get to go out, like you said, how do we change it in the future? How do we allow it to be? They'll get to choose what they hold on to and what they don't. But at least when I am gone, or, whatever is next, they can look back and be like, oh my gosh, I remember watching that with my mom, or I remember talking about that with my grandma, or, like things like that. So it's just about rooting them in culture and in the culture that we have, and just then allowing them to make their mark forward.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Like, yeah, just not like creating, I like to call them micro memories, right? Like creating these micro memories that it's like, they may never remember until someone quotes a movie and they're like, whoa.
Yeah, right. Where did that come from?
I remember, whoa, like I watched that. Or
Right.
My husband and I have those every now and again. He'll say something. I'm like, wait, what's that from? And he's like, what do you mean, what's that from? And I'm like, that's like from a movie or a show or something. He's like, oh yeah, from this. And I was like, oh yeah. Whoa.
Right.
I remember that. Like I remember, and I could, same thing, like the Cosby Show, I could tell you, like, I have these memories of, I would go to dance class with a friend's, my parents' friends' kids who lived a half hour out of town. And so then after dance class, we would get pizza or someone would cook meal. They would come to our house. We would watch the Cosby Show and then they would drive home.
Yeah.
And it's like, I could not tell you very much about the Cosby Show, but I know everything that happened like for 2 years on that, and that it was on a Thursday.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, those are the things that's so funny. Like, as children, what remember, and I'm still friends with that friend, like that childhood friend that I danced with. Like, I actually just saw her when we were in her town. We came to lunch with my parents and I. But yeah, it's those things that when your kid sees a picture or something that you can go, that it stirs those memories or things, or to create those memories that you're talking about, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You're right. It's just having that in our world versus forcing the tradition to happen. I think so much of why people get exhausted by the holidays is because we force a tradition that sometimes might not even have been the best tradition. Like our Thanksgiving wasn't that great. It just was the tradition. We switched it up completely this year. And I feel like even though we were all sad and went on our own ways, like parts of it we missed, I think a lot of it was just a relief. Like we don't have to go through that forced tradition. Like we don't have to do all the stuff that we actually didn't love doing. Having that there, we had this very similar to your Thursday was we had Sunday nights at my grandma's house, and it was, I couldn't tell you the shows that we watched, but it was the Disney did a Sunday night thing, right? And so we always watched the Disney Sunday movie and did that with my cousins. But yeah, that memory is very, very strong. But then some of those forced things just feel so complicated that I don't think that they stuck with me as much. So it's just the allowing us to be children or to be adults or human, right?
Or
I don't even think
or be adults and still be children.
Right. To just allow us to exist. Right.
We don't have to take ourselves that seriously. Like, it's okay to not know, right? Like you said,
not that serious. That is correct.
Right. And I think that's honestly, like, as I'm entering middle age, I guess, it's like, I'm like, oh, yeah, this like super mom thing, or the mom that does it all, or shows up for everything, or like, even this morning, my daughter's like, did you send this email? And I was like, no, I got a new phone and then I forgot. And I think I looked and I was like, oh, I started a draft in my old phone. I never sent it. Sorry. And I'm being like, and of course my daughter's 12. So it's like, oh,
right.
But at the same time, like being like, whatever, I'll do it right now. And I have nothing else to say to you. Like, whoops.
It's not that serious.
Like, we're all human. We all forget. And then, of course, I might have an entire family full of ADHDers. So we're all like all over the place. We're lucky. I mean, and then there's all the other things that go along with the traditions and other pieces. So, well, awesome. Thank you so much, Kitty. This is awesome. And we will do this. We'll find more subjects to talk about because we have so many similar cross paths that I love it.
No, I can talk forever. So
you and me both, right? I was like, part of me was like, do we just record a bunch of episodes? So I'm going to stop recording here and then